Good afternoon. My name is Patty Dorn with the Maryland Insurance Administration, and I'm going to be the moderator for today's event. Welcome to today's Lunch with Mia. It's Ask the Expert, what homeowners, renters, and business owners need to know about reducing your risk of flooding. Before we get started, I want to do a quick poll just to see how we all got here today. If you're calling in via telephone, you're not going to be able to see it. As well, certain versions of Zoom, it won't show up as well. But if you do see it, if you could give us a quick answer, it's really useful for us. Thanks so much for that. All right, so thanks everyone for your answers. In 2021, Governor Larry Hogan declared April to be Flood Awareness Month in Maryland. Flooding is the #1 natural hazard in Maryland. Marylanders experience flooding every year, from the mountains of Western Maryland to the Atlantic coast on the Eastern Shore. Now let's watch a short video from Governor Hogan about the 2022 Flood Awareness Month in Maryland.
2022 marks the 50th anniversary of Hurricane Agnes, one of the worst storms to hit Maryland ever in our history. The resulting flooding was felt all across Maryland, destroying homes, businesses, and roads in its wake. That's why this Flood Awareness Month, we apply the lessons learned from past flood events so we can be better prepared anytime flooding strikes. This year's theme is Know, Plan, Act. Flooding can happen at any time and anywhere throughout the state.
What are simple steps that every Marylander can take to be better prepared when a flood strikes? The first step is to know your risk. Is my home or business in an area that is frequently flooded? Does the road I take to work often shut down due to high water? What are some of the damages I've already seen from past storm events? Is my waterfront property becoming waterlogged? Having a plan is the next step. Now that I know my risks, what can I do to minimize them? Do I have the right insurance for my home or business? What can I do to minimize damages in my basement? What do I have on hand to be prepared for flood events? Planning ahead will prepare you for the next time a flood hits, and lower the risk to you, your family, your home, business, and community. The third step is to act. Actions can include creating an emergency preparedness kit for your car and home, floodproofing your basement, or removing or elevating items from your bottom floor, and pursuing community projects that can increase the flood protection for your home.
Using Know, Plan, Act, and taking simple steps today will better prepare you for any time a flood strikes and can limit the impact you and your community feel in the event of flooding. Find out how to keep you and your community safe by visiting resiliencypartnership.com and engage with others on social media using the hashtag FloodAwareMD. Thank you and stay safe.
For today's event, we brought together representatives from several agencies to address these 3 topics and help you understand what you can do to protect yourself. So we have with us today Kevin Wagner, Community Assistance Program Manager, Water and Science Administration, the Maryland Department of the Environment. In 1987, the Maryland Department of the Environment was created to protect and preserve the state's air, water, and land resources and safeguard the environmental health of Maryland's citizens. MDE's duties also encompass enforcement of environmental laws and regulations, long-term planning, and research. MDE provides technical assistance to Maryland industry and communities for pollution and growth issues and environmental emergencies. Next today, we have Jessica Nussbaum, State Individual Assistance Officer and Community Preparedness Coordinator, Communications and Outreach Branch, the Maryland Department of Emergency Management, MDEM. MDEM is a national leader in emergency management that provides Maryland residents, organizations, and emergency management partners with expert information, programmatic activities, and leadership in the delivery of financial, technical, and physical resources to shape a resilient Maryland where communities thrive. Next, we have Sandy Hertz, Director, Office of Climate Change Resilience and Adaptation, the Maryland Department of Transportation. Maryland Department of Transportation, MDOT, is a customer-driven leader that delivers safe, sustainable, intelligent, and exceptional transportation solutions in order to connect our customers to life's opportunities. MDOT is comprised of the Secretary's Office and 6 transportation agencies: the State Highway Administration, Maryland Transit Administration, Motor Vehicle Administration, Maryland Aviation Administration, Maryland Port Administration, and the Maryland Transportation Authority. Next up, Richard Sabota, Senior Insurance Specialist, Regional CRS Coordinator, FEMA Region 3. FEMA's mission is to help the nation prepare for, respond to, and recover from disasters. FEMA administers the National Flood Insurance Program, NFIP. Next up, Joy Hatchett, Associate Commissioner of the Consumer Education and Advocacy Unit, Maryland Insurance Administration. The Maryland Insurance Administration is a state agency that regulates the business of insurance in Maryland, making sure insurance companies and the agents and brokers that sell insurance in Maryland follow the laws. So before we get started, some quick housekeeping rules. This event is being recorded, as you acknowledged when you arrived. Please leave your phones and computers on mute for this event. And if you're not presenting, if you could please keep your cameras off. If you have questions for today's speakers, and we do encourage you to ask questions, but please use the chat box and make sure that the questions are sent to everyone and not just specifically to the speaker or the host. We're going to save all the questions for a Q&A period at the end. And so with that, let's get started asking questions today. So I'm going to start with the first question. Let's start by asking anyone on our panel what their agency does to help consumers in Maryland know their risk.
I guess I could start.
Yeah,
I wasn't sure if we were doing an order here or what, but thank you, Patty. Pleasure being here today with you all. But I did want to let folks know about at least 2 different web mapping applications that Maryland Department of the Environment helped to create. But understand there are also other ones out there, some of which our panelists will describe. But in particular, there's the Maryland Flood Risk Application. That's the first one. And then the second one would be the Coast Smart Climate Ready Action Boundary. And if you think about that as an acronym, of course, it spells CRAB, and we love our crabs in Maryland. So we have this sort of risk analysis sort of tool that takes it a step further. But anyway, both of these tools are available on mdfloodmaps.net, mdfloodmaps.net. And I think we're going to put the link in the chat, but you could also use .com or .org. We've purchased those domains as well. But anyway, the first one, the Flood Risk Application, provides access to anyone to FEMA's flood insurance rate map. So basically, we've taken the digital data and added that in our mapping application. So the colors will match very closely to what FEMA's mapping systems are, showing the high risk area, the moderate risk area, and then low risk doesn't show any shading. So that's the first sort of tool. But the other tool, the CRAB tool, the Climate Ready Action Boundary tool, takes it a step further. So we take that FEMA flood elevation, we actually add 3 feet to that, and then we extended the line out horizontally to see where it impacted the ground. Now this gives us a kind of a futuristic sort of understanding of where flood risk could be, because we often hear that I think the statistic is 25% of the claims occur outside of the mapped boundary or that special flood hazard area. So, using these tools kind of give you a good understanding of what high risk areas there are, maybe some moderate risk and things like that. But the CRAB, the Climate Ready Action Boundary, kind of closely aligns to what a Category 2 storm surge would be. So anyway, these two models or these two tools are available on mdfloodmaps.net. Thank you.
So at the Maryland Department of Emergency Management, we use our social media accounts, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, et cetera, to put out all kinds of preparedness information. One way to help you know your risk. Another thing we do is participate in a lot of different outreach events where we speak to residents and business owners about the seriousness of flooding in Maryland. And flooding tends to be one of my soapbox kind of issues that I will just talk to people for hours about. And it's so surprising how many people think that because maybe it's never flooded at their home before, or they don't live right next to a stream or creek or the ocean, that it can't flood at their home or it can't flood at their business. But one thing we really like to tell people is if it can rain in your area, it can flood in your area. So they really do need to take that into consideration.
I guess I'll go next. MDOT actually maintains the CHART website, which is Maryland's official 511 traveler information service. So what we have posted up on this website is information for travelers regarding current traffic conditions, road closure information, weather-related traffic events and conditions like flooding. We have, I think it gets pushes every 90 seconds in terms of updates on roadway conditions. There's a number of different, I guess, additional views you can go through. So you can actually look at a map that shows where active construction activities are occurring. You could look at live camera feeds. We have roadway condition mapping applications. Current weather data is posted up there, and also it includes severe weather information. So similar to what Kevin said a few minutes ago, we have a website link that I will put in the chat, but it's a pretty easy one to remember. It's chart.maryland.gov.
Hi, everybody. As been mentioned already, there are a number of mapping resources available to assist property owners and renters to know their risk. We'll be placing our Map Service Center website address in the chat as well. And anyone can visit that site to obtain information about their risk from flooding, as well as get assistance from a map specialist. And yes, you can talk to a live human being as well. Thanks.
So I guess I'll close it out. The MIA, similar to the Maryland Department of Emergency Management, participates in a number of both in-person and virtual events where we try to make sure that consumers, be it homeowners, renters, business owners, and also those people that drive vehicles, know what their insurance policies cover, and more importantly, what they don't cover when it comes to flooding. And as Jess mentioned, if it can rain at your house, it can flood at your house. So it's really important that we interact with the public and sort of get that message out. Also, we have brochures on our website that gives all types of information about knowing what your particular policies cover, making sure that you don't find out once there is a flood that your homeowner's policy does not cover flooding. We also are very active on our social media page, and we use Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and Nextdoor. And then what we try to do is to meet people where they are. So we've got written materials, we have videos, we have long materials and short materials. So basically what we encourage you to do in your communities is to share this information with your neighbors And we are more than happy not only to appear at events that you're having, but if you'd like us to come out and give a presentation to one of your community groups, we're more than happy to do that as well.
Thanks, Joy, and thanks, everyone. So the next up is, what can anyone on the panel explain what your agency does to help consumers plan?
Kevin, you want me to go first this time? Mix it up a little bit. All right. So at MDOT, as I mentioned before, we do have the chart website and the Maryland 511, information up there. In terms of planning, really for the consumers, we're looking for them to visit that website before they even go out on the road. So plan ahead by checking to see what the roadway conditions are before you leave. Another tool that we have, which I didn't highlight in my first segment, is the Maryland State Highway Administration's Climate Change Vulnerability Viewer. And that's actually an application that we've had for a number of years, and it's a long link to that one. So I'll put it in the chat for everybody. But essentially that application is an ArcGIS Online web application. It has mapping. It provides county flood statistics. It has that climate ready action boundary that Kevin mentioned before. And in addition to that, it provides scenarios for where we might see future roadway inundation from sea level rise and storm events. So it's a pretty cool tool if you're traveling or you're even thinking about purchasing property in the future. That incorporation of highway flood depth projections can be helpful in terms of making those types of decisions as well.
Hi again, everybody. Rich Sabota here. Just want to let you know that insurance is an important part of financial planning, of course, especially flood insurance. We believe it is a consideration rather for everyone. And yes, I'll say it again, anywhere it can rain, it can flood. Just ask the people in Houston back in 2016. We suggest that you contact your current insurance agent or company and to get a flood insurance premium quote. It's quick, it's painless, it's non-binding. Thanks.
So we're big on encouraging people to have all kinds of plans together before an event happens, just so things go a lot smoother when you do have to deal with some kind of emergency situation. So this can be anything from having your family communication plan prepared and making sure that it's up to date. Phone numbers change, addresses change, all kinds of contact information changes. So make sure that you're reviewing that relatively regularly and have that information all together and up to date. Not to steal any kind of thunder from the insurance administration and Joy, but having appropriate insurance coverage is always something that we encourage, making sure that people read through their policies and know what it covers and what the limitations are so that they have the best policy possible. Having an emergency supply kit that's stocked, and another thing that you have to make sure nothing expires so that everything's up to date in that as well. And one other planning, just since everyone else is throwing out website information, we have the Know Your Zone Hurricane Evacuation Zone website, which is knowyourzonemd.com. And this is related to flooding as well. The areas that would be evacuated are the areas that are going to be more prone to flooding from these types of hurricane events. So just planning ahead of time, going in and seeing what zone you live, work in, or even visit that you travel to is really important to do ahead of time.
Kevin, do you want to go ahead?
Oh, okay. I thought we were going in reverse order or something this time. Wasn't sure. Thank you. So as Patty said in the introduction, our agency helps protect Maryland's land, water, and air resources. So in the vein of, Flood Awareness Month, that's going on throughout April here. So we have a lot of different programs and divisions that do many different things. So my focus is particularly related to floodplain management. And I know the question was directed at consumers, but we help everybody. We help property owners. We help people that have questions about mapping, about regulations, about construction, about insurance to some degree. We can help with some of the triggers there. But feel free to come to us or come to me as a resource if you ever need any help. And when you throw out the term a plan, it's like, well, what the heck are they talking about? Do I have to put together a multi-page document of some kind of an analysis? Like, I'm working on a strategic plan right now, and I'm up to like 20 pages, and we're not asking you to really do all that. Really, it's just kind of education. First of all, knowing your risk after you've kind of visited these different flood risk applications, kind of applying that to your situation. So what would happen to your particular home or business? How high could the water get? Would the water be on the street or the road? That might impact your car. So once you kind of have that information in your head, then you can sort of say, well, okay, now there's some things that I could do within my particular property or on my particular property. Maybe I could elevate things, or maybe I need to talk to my agent to learn a little bit more about the types of coverage or things like that. We also want you to get you thinking about like future renovation projects. So if you're in a high risk or moderate risk area, consider doing things that might reduce future flood risk, using building materials that if they do get wet, aren't going to be something that you have to tear out and throw away. Things like, I don't know, what am I thinking? Cement board or marine grade plywood, or things like that. That if it gets submerged in water, that it's not going to get damaged that you have to throw out. But there's also other things like flood openings that we can talk about, as you get more into the floodplain management aspects. But again, knowing your risk is kind of the key part of this. Are you in one of those areas? Then what could be the potential depth of that flooding that would lead you to sort of other decisions that you would take?
So the topic here is really focused on planning. And I can't tell you how many times I've sat in on a presentation that Jess will be giving, and we'll hear the question, well, isn't FEMA going to come in and write a check, or the state going to come in and pay for the damage? So that's my plan. I'm going to make sure that I apply for this grant money or these funds. Well, for any of you that are on the phone that have ever been involved in a disaster, first of all, in order for there to be any money at all available from FEMA or the state, there are certain thresholds that have to be met. And generally speaking, we won't meet those thresholds. So the ability to get funding generally for some reason, my audio keeps getting muted. Hopefully you guys can hear me. So just basically to say that even if, and as I said, generally speaking, we will not get FEMA funding, but even if we do, it will more likely than not cover the amount of your damage. And let me repeat that. It will not cover the total amount of your damage. And Jess and Rich can both speak to that. And that is why, as a part of your plan, you need to consider, and I will never tell someone you have to buy flood insurance, but understand that if you don't have flood insurance, then basically you've made the decision to self-insure. You've made the decision that you're going to pay to repair and replace your structure and your personal property. Also, one of the important parts of planning is making sure that if you do have that insurance policy, you understand the coverage and how to file a claim and the things and the steps that you can do to make that claims process go smoothly. One of the key things that we encourage consumers to do is make a personal property inventory before you have a claim. Having that inventory will make the process go much more smoothly. And if you're wondering, well, how do I do that? Go to our website and we will tell you and show you how to make that inventory. It's a very, very simple process.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. So again, today we're talking about flood, we're talking about No Plan Act. And so finally, let's talk about what each of your agencies does when it comes to ACT.
I'll go first. Me first. So, you know, I think the key is just take a first step. It can seem kind of overwhelming with a lot of the information and what's going on. But, you know, talking with your family, friends, or neighbors, exchange contact information. This is something I heard from MDEM a couple of years ago. I just think that's brilliant. You know, we all need to kind of communicate with each other, share information. Hey, we might be traveling when the big event happens. And wouldn't it be nice to call your neighbor and say, hey, can you check on something for me? But also keep in mind, we're here as a resource at the state, of course. But you also probably live in a community that has a lot of resources to you, including a local floodplain manager or a local emergency manager. And they're usually glad to assist you with those kinds of things. If you need help with those contacts, again, we can provide that information to you. But once you've kind of figured out if your property is at risk of flooding, what can you do to minimize that risk? So think about things around the house, like we all have gutters that direct water away. If those gutters are clogged, that water has nowhere to go except to roll off and then be around your foundation and might cause some water issues. So make sure your gutters are clear. Get some help with that if you need to. Maybe there's a neighbor that, again, could help you with that. Looking at kind of the drainage around your property. Do you have positive drainage? So after it goes through the gutters, is it draining away from the house? Something else that we recommend is elevating things off the floor. So in the basement are usually the first areas to get wet. Maybe consider putting things on shelves or putting things in plastic tubs, you know, especially personal belongings and things that are precious to you and your family. Take a look at your sump pump if you have one, and make sure it's working properly. And has a battery backup. So if the power goes out, you don't want the sump pump to stop working. But more extreme mitigation measures, you know, like elevating a home or installing flood openings or relocations or buyouts. These are the kinds of things where it becomes increasingly important to get to know your local officials, because usually some kind of a project needs to go through the local government. So get to know your local floodplain manager, your local emergency manager, you know, because these mitigation measures, they take time. These grant projects and programs and things like that. So, but the best time to do mitigation is not after the disaster, it's before.
So before I talk about acting, I want to take a second to thank Joy for what she brought up about the limitations of federal and state funding and people kind of thinking about relying on that as how they're going to recover. And just a number that a lot of people find very surprising is even if we do get the FEMA declaration that would be bringing money into the state to help people recover, the average payout for that across the country is between $3,000 and $4,000. So if you think about all of the things that you could potentially lose during a flood event or any kind of event, a wind event, anything like that, even if we can jump through all of the hoops and get this federal assistance, $3,000 to $4,000 is not going to help you fully recover. And the point of a FEMA program is to get you back to a safe, stable, and sanitary environment, not back to the level that your home and your property was prior to the event. So again, so important to plan and take this action, circling back around to the ACT part, ahead of time so that you don't have the more major impacts to your property. So with the Maryland Department of Emergency Management, a lot of the same things that Kevin said are things that we encourage folks to do ahead of time. And then when we're looking at the actual event and taking action as things are happening, we encourage folks to tune into their local weather forecasting stations. A lot of people turn to us and ask us, what the weather is going to be and how much rain is expected. And we do push out on our social media channels all of the different weather information that we receive from the National Weather Service. Sometimes we're a little bit more delayed in that, as we're waiting to get the information from them. So if you go direct to the source, get that most up-to-date information, follow the local office that covers your area, that's how you're going to get it the quickest as possible. So then when you hear what those up-to-date weather forecasts are, you can start to take that action. You'll know if you need to start considering evacuation for yourself, for your family. If you need to start elevating those items, taking things from lower levels in your home and moving them up to a higher level, or bringing in items from outside, and securing them in an interior area.
Thanks, Jessica. We suggest strongly that everyone visit our website, www.floodsmart.gov, and we'll post that for you. That website was put together with consumers in mind. As Joy was mentioning before, do you know how to file a claim? Do you know what your policy covers? Things like that, and a whole heck of a lot more information are available out on floodsmart.gov. And in addition, we do recommend, of course, that people contact their current insurance agent or insurance company to have that discussion about protecting yourself with a flood insurance policy, to be able to obtain a premium quote. Best to know what it's going to cost you, obviously, going in, but we'll tell you that you can't afford to be out without a flood insurance policy. But it takes all the guesswork out of cost of protecting yourself against losses, and this is all to protect you from the most common cause of property damage.
So thank you for that, Rich. I think I'm kind of in the place of asking for some crowdsourcing help when it comes to acting. I mentioned earlier that we certainly want you as a traveler along our roads to visit chart.maryland.gov before you go, so that you know what the roadway conditions are. But one thing that you could also do as a consumer in Maryland or a traveler in Maryland is to use the features in whatever mapping app you're using or navigation app you're using to get from point A to point B. And when I say this, I mean, if you're using Waze, for example, if there's standing water on the road and flooded conditions, drop a pin and mark that area as there is, there are flooded roadways here. Many people don't know this, but at MDOT, we do have an agreement with Waze, and we do pull in some of that incident data into our our system. So we do use that information, and if we don't use it in real time, we can use it in as a historical perspective, so that we can start to get an idea of where flooding conditions have been occurring. Kevin mentioned at the beginning of this panel discussion that flooding isn't always just occurring in the floodplain areas. And in fact, there was a study done last year by Pew Charitable Trust and ICF, and they used some of the information that we had in our M.SHA chart system. And what they found out was that more than 78 or around 78% of the flooding incidents that were documented in our chart system occurred outside of the 100 and the 500 year floodplains. And so what that means to us at MDOT is that, you know, we need to find out why we're having flooding occurrences on our roadways, but it also could mean something to Kevin and the group over at MDE when they're thinking about the floodplain mapping. Is there something that's happened that warrants a watershed study, and maybe the floodplain conditions in that area have changed? So just in terms of acting, make sure you know what you're driving out into. Like Jessica said, you know what your weather forecast is looking like. If you know that a road that you usually travel around on typically floods, then choose your detour route before you even head out the door. And good rule of thumb for people to remember is that, 6 inches of water and moving water can knock over an adult person. 12 inches of water can actually move your car. So if you cannot see the line striping on the road, do not drive into that segment of roadway.
So I think the common theme from everybody that's on the panel has been everyone can take some step to act. It can either be a large step or something as small. Something as small as if you know that the rain is going to come and you happen to have a basement that floods, get the stuff off the floor. Or if you park in an area that floods all the time and you know it's going to rain, move your car. We each can take certain small steps to secure our property and protect our family. And so I'm not saying that we can eliminate the risk of flooding, but we can all take certain steps to reduce the damage that flooding can cause our property. And I think everybody that you've listened to on the panel has some excellent websites and lots of great information. And what I sort of always tell people, we don't expect you to sit down and read the novel. Basically take a nugget, one little nugget from this presentation and follow through on that nugget. And then over time, take an additional nugget. And what we would hope is over time, each of you will help your families do steps and take steps to reduce the amount of damage that your home, your rental space, your business, or your automobiles will have if in fact, and I won't even say if in fact, when it floods.
Thanks so much, Joy. And thanks to all the panelists. That was great information today. I'm going to start the Q&A session. And again, I want to encourage all the attendees, if you have questions, please go ahead and put those in the chat. I do have a couple questions already. And up on the screen, you're going to see the contact information for all the panelists today. So let me go up to the chat and see what I have. I think this one speaks to Joy. Someone asked about the presentation including homeowners warranty information. Would you mind speaking to that for a minute?
Well, first of all, the Maryland Insurance Administration regulates insurance products. And generally speaking, homeowners warranties are not insurance products. And if you're looking and have an issue with a particular homeowner's warranty, you would need to go to the Office of the Attorney General. Joyce, if you could put in the chat, the Consumer Protection Division, that information. Now, if you don't know whether now sometimes the product is actually an insurance product that we would regulate. And if you don't know whether it's a warranty or an insurance product, you can get in touch with us, and you can either go to our website or you can use our phone number. And Joyce, if you could also, once you get an opportunity, put our 800 number in the chat and contact us, and we can tell you whether it's an insurance product or it's actually a warranty, and you would need to go to the Consumer Protection Division. So that's a long way, a very long answer to a very short question that basically says it depends, but generally it's not an insurance product and not something that we oversee.
Thanks, Joy. The next question I think can be for a couple of different panelists. Are there any government programs that help homeowners mitigate flood damage in your home?
Jess, did you want to talk about the ones coordinated through MDEM or?
So mitigation definitely isn't my wheelhouse. I know just enough to be dangerous about it. My understanding for mitigation funding is that any requests for that have to go through the county itself. So individual homeowners would not be able to do a request for FEMA mitigation funds. I know that mitigation funds have been used for things like home elevations and home buyouts in dangerous areas. But as far as things like, you know, waterproofing your basement and things like that, I'm not sure that that funding would be appropriate for those kind of issues.
Yeah, and I'll just add to that. I think it's 100% accurate. A lot of the projects we're seeing are kind of exactly like you described. They're buyouts, they're elevation projects, not your typical, you know, elevate your electrical mechanical equipment. It's not to say that that couldn't be done, but I think with these programs, they're trying to look at more larger scale things. And I'll go back to what I said earlier, that it's really important for you to get to know the people within your community. We get calls a lot of times from property owners, and we're happy to respond to them and try to provide them with some information, but we often direct them right back to their respective county or city or town agency that has that emergency management sort of connection. Because as Jess said, the locals need to do the applications to apply for this various funding that's coordinated through the Maryland Department of Emergency Management. So these grant programs there's a couple different ones out there that the Federal Emergency Management Agency has, and they're all kind of mitigation and related, and there's different things that you could do. But the state of Maryland also has a comprehensive flood management grant program that funding started getting added to that over the last couple of years. So that program can kind of be used as a match to the FEMA program, because usually the FEMA programs require at least a 25% match. So it's not, you know, free money necessarily. They cover most of it, but not all of it. So where are you going to get that 25% match? Sometimes you could split that through a state cost share. But again, this really needs to be coordinated closely with your committee, your local government that will actually apply for the funding on your behalf.
Also, the Department of Housing and Community Development, and Joyce, I know you're getting tired of hearing your name, but Joyce, if you could put DHCD's contact information in the chat, DHCD has some of it is grant, some of it are low interest loans that are available, especially for seniors, to help with home improvement and other issues. Now, some of the funding is income-based, but I would check with them because depending on the circumstances, there may be funding available through DHCD.
And if I can add one more thing to that, looking into available grant and other programs is a really timely topic at this point. Studies that have been done indicate that for every dollar, let's say, of mitigation monies that are spent, saves about $6 or $7 worth of damage. Congress has passed a number of funding programs recently that really account for increases in types of mitigation activities can be done out there. So really the first place best to start with is your local community leaders, and they can track down, or you can check with your local elected or state elected representatives to get more information on those.
Just building a little bit off of what Rich was just mentioning, you know, there are a couple of grant programs that I know that MDE and MDOT have looked at in the past, and it's definitely something, again, that needs to be coordinated through the local communities. But I think Kevin might have said it earlier. You know, mitigation really should occur after you've had it done, after you've had something happen to you once. I mean, it's kind of like that whole shame on me kind of deal. If you've gotten flooded once and then you don't realize that it might happen again, and you don't prepare for it, and it happens again, then it's kind of like that moment of, oh, I should have done something. So when we're looking at grant programs, there's the Building Resilient Infrastructure in Communities grant funding that is part of FEMA. And I would encourage those of you that are active in your communities to take a look at some of those grant programs that Rich mentioned under FEMA and other grant programs that are coming out from the federal government that look at things like resiliency planning. And what that means is looking at ways that you can reduce your flood risk in your communities and by extension as well, your homes. So there are resources out there. It might take a little bit of legwork, and it might take a little bit of coordination with other members of your community to realize a project, but I think it's worth the effort, especially if you and your neighbors are having similar impacts and similar recurrent impacts, I would say.
Free money is always worth looking into.
Yes.
Thanks, everyone. Moving on to the next question in the chat. Are there flood doors available in the US? The only flood doors I've been able to find are from the UK, stormmeister.com, but I cannot find any flood doors available in the US. Flood doors would have helped me a lot with the recent flood, 10/2021. I would really like to replace my exterior doors with flood doors. Any information on this would be greatly appreciated.
Yeah, I'm going to take a first crack at that, and thank you for the question. You know, that it's a challenge sometimes to find the materials like when we need them, and this really became increasingly important after flooding that occurred in 2018 in Howard County area. So a lot of the businesses were looking for this very thing, and the Corps of Engineers did some recommendations, and this was one of their recommendations, is using these flood doors, which was great. But where do I buy them? And it was exactly like you're saying, we have to go to the UK to purchase these things. So as state agencies, we need to be very careful about making recommendations for any particular product, because it all comes off as an endorsement. But I did want to highlight a great resource that it was actually stood up within the last several years, and it's called the Flood Mitigation Industry Association. So I put the link in the chat there for you. but that's kind of a compilation of all these different sort of groups that have flood reduction or flood risk reduction type of products like you're asking about. So that way, me as a government person, I don't have to say, well, go check out this particular product. Go to this resource there, and they can really help put you in the right direction. But there are other resources out there. Again, I don't want to highlight any particular products, but you know, there are some.
Thanks, Kevin. The next question, are there standard or regulated rates for flood insurance? I'm wondering if I can call my current agent and add on to my policy, or is there a need to shop different insurance companies / agents?
And thanks for that question. Our rates are standard, and yes, the first thing I would suggest that you do is contact your current insurance agent or company. We have 60 or 70 different companies that write flood insurance on behalf of the National Flood Insurance Program, and it's all the familiar names in the industry that you're familiar with and a lot more. So starting off with your current insurance agent or company, starting off at floodsmart.gov. Either way, you can get directed to an awful lot of information. And again, the agent who's quoting flood insurance on behalf of the National Flood Insurance Program, you would just need to answer a few basic questions. And the process at this point takes only about 15 minutes. So it's not real time consuming, it's worth your while, and you can get a binding quote for flood insurance premiums for your home or other property that you need to protect.
All right, thanks. Next question. What if the ground dirt was washed away, which exposed the house foundation?
I think that question was asked when we were talking about like grants and resources. So I'm guessing it was made in sort of that vein, but I'm not aware of myself any particular, you know, grant program that would help with that kind of thing. But again, I'd circle back to your, you know, county or town or city government to see if they might have some resources or some ideas for you of what could be done. You know, maybe there's a larger issue going on that caused that dirt to be washed away, and maybe they need to look at it at a larger scale.
All right, what about grants available if you already have flood insurance?
Yes, and anytime that you purchase a flood insurance policy, or indeed any insurance policy that's really intended to be your first source of recovery, but anything that that policy does not cover, there may be grants that are available to you that cover damages that go up and beyond your policy limits. And again, probably the best place to start to looking into those grants is locally with your city offices, or state or community offices rather.
Thanks, Rich. Is flood by definition limited to events of nature like rains, overflowing rivers, etc.?
And thanks for that question. The definition of a flood is interesting. It involves water that rises on normally dry land in unusual and rapid manner. And if you think about it for a moment, and I live not too far away from Philadelphia, we've got some very old plumbing in Philadelphia, and people's water mains out in the middle of their street tend to go off like Old Faithful from time to time. Any of that water that accumulates in a rapid and unusual fashion on normally dry land areas like the middle of your street meets our definition of flooding and would be a covered event under our policy.
And just to add to that, people basically call it flooding, basically any time that there is water damage. A bursted pipe inside of your home is not what flood insurance covers. So I'm not saying that your homeowner's policies, because it's going to depend on the circumstance of what caused that pipe to burst. But flooding is different than water damage that is caused by a burst pipe. And also you may have water sewage backup, which also, depending on what caused that backup, may be as a result of something that could be covered by a homeowner's insurance policy. So once again, and I will refer you to our website, we have lots of information that makes the difference and the distinction between water sewer backup, a pipe burst, and flooding.
Thanks, Joy, and thanks, Rich. This looks like our last question in the chat. Is there a department where businesses that provide water mitigation services can sign up to receive information and updates of what the state provides as resources of upcoming natural disasters? Sir, anyone who has any information about that?
So I'm not sure I understand the question. I mean, I know that MDIM has a, what is Allegra's group called, Jess?
The Private Sector Integration Program.
Right. And that's a group that members of the business community can find out about various resources, but I'm not so sure if that's what the question is asking.
I think though,
Thanks.
to add to that, there's also, various weather alert systems. I think some were mentioned today through like maybe the chart system that Sandy was talking about, but you can get the FEMA app and sign up and get weather alerts on there. So you can pick up the 5 geographic areas throughout the state. So if you're serving a wide area, you can kind of get a cross section of different locations. Each county oftentimes will have a weather alert system, and that's really great to sign up for as well. So that can kind of give you some alerts and warnings. They traditionally follow the National Weather Service, but those are a couple of ideas that have come to mind.
Thanks, Kevin.
I think too, the only other suggestion I would have is Department of Commerce is probably where you've registered your business, and if you're providing water mitigation services, you might want to reach out to them and just see if they keep like a listserv for specific types of businesses, and whether or not that's something that they can push out those types of alerts to. But I'm not familiar with a specific business that does that ahead of known natural disasters, except for maybe Department of Commerce. That would be the only one I would think of besides MDEM.
Thanks so much. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for the great questions. Thank you, panelists, for all the great information today. I just want to thank everyone who attended today's event. You can find more information about flooding in Maryland at the Maryland Resiliency Partnership page, and I just put that URL in the chat. The MRP is a collaboration of public and private partners working to improve the resiliency of Maryland communities to flood and climate hazards. And the partners include the entities our speakers are representing today. Just so we can evaluate the quality and content of this event today, we're going to put a brief survey in the chat. If you wouldn't mind clicking on that to give us a little bit of feedback, we would really appreciate it. And that's just going to appear in the chat. Thanks so much. Our next lunch with Mia is going to be May 19th at 2 p.m. And that's going to be understanding your prescription drug coverage and what resources are available to help you pay for medications. On May 12th at 1 p.m., we're going to talk to you about what you need to know about life insurance. It's going to be a presentation about term life insurance and permanent life insurance products and questions that you need to ask. So please visit our website for more upcoming events and to also sign up for event alerts. And so with that, I just want to say thank you, everyone. Thank you to the panelists today. Thanks everyone who attended. Thanks for all the great questions. And we hope to see you soon at another one of Maryland Insurance Administration's events. Thanks so much, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.